Hello everyone, I just wanted to give my thoughts on the recent changes that have been made to the YouTube partner program. I first became aware that the changes were happening from a video that my friend Pete at Mini Warzone put up on his channel, and I've been watching a few other channels and looking at their responses as well, and I find that I am taking a different attitude to it. That's probably mainly because I don't monetize my channel and don't have really any interest or expectation that I would ever be able to make money from my channel. It's not the reason I have a channel. It's not the reason a lot of people who monetize their channels have a channel either. They just monetize their channels because they think, well, the opportunity to make some money from my videos is there. I may as well make the odd £1 or £2 a year. And in fact, there's another channel you may be familiar with, Wargaming with Gary. He mentioned on one of his videos recently that now he's got to the 200 subscriber limit, he was thinking about monetizing his channel, and he was asking people their opinion on that. Well, unfortunately now, Gary, there's no need to worry yourself, because the change that has just been made is that YouTube are going to require a minimum of 1,000 subscribers to your channel before you can monetize. So it's not a prospect for you for the time being until your channel grows a lot more. But that really has been the reason for the alarm that people have expressed, that people who are on around 500 or 600 subscribers and growing, and Pete is on the cusp of getting 1,000 subscribers, so he's particularly miffed by the prospect of having to or having his channel demonetized for the time being until he gets there. So you can understand at first glance why everyone is so annoyed, but I want to try and explain to you why this is actually going to be a very good thing. Now, the way I come at this is that I am fascinated by the subject of complexity theory, and my initial interest in it stems from a book called How Nature Works, written by a chap called Per Back, who has passed away now. He's no longer alive. But basically it's a very readable book. Don't be alarmed by the title, which the subtitle is The Science of Self-Organised Criticality. It's a very readable book, very understandable, and it's fascinating, because what it tries to explain is that you can use data on any particular phenomena to understand its nature. So, for instance, if you looked at the number of earthquakes that happen in the world each year, they're measured on the Richter scale. We've all heard of the Richter scale. It goes from 1 to 10, and it's a logarithmic scale. So a Richter scale of 1, I forget the exact comparisons, but a Richter scale of 1 up to about 4, you would barely notice. It probably wouldn't even wake you up. But then as it gets increasingly goes up the Richter scale, the earthquakes get exponentially stronger. And the reason that is that the Richter scale is a logarithmic scale. So 1 is a certain level, 2 is 10 times 1, 3 is 10 times 2, and therefore 100 times 1, and so on. So very quickly it goes up in an exponential fashion. If you measure the number of earthquakes that are at level 1 in a year and at level 2 in a year and so on, and put the other axis in a logarithmic in a logarithmic scale as well, so you would have a logarithmic scale which was spaced 10, then 100, then 1,000 and so on in terms of the frequency of each of those earthquakes occurring, then what you would see is a straight line, or more or less a straight line. So here's an example which is a graph showing you the number of cities ranked by size around the year 1920, and the curve shows the number of cities in which the population exceeds a given size, or equivalently the relative ranking of cities versus their population. Not entirely sure I understand what that means, but you can see there's a logarithmic scale in one direction and the other, and you've got what is almost a straight line. There's certainly a linear direction to that curve, and the same goes for earthquakes, the same goes for forest fires, the same goes for all sorts of things. But you'll notice the interesting thing about this particular graph is that we're talking about cities here, we're talking about populations, we're talking about human behaviour, and the same type of analysis can be done of human behaviour on the internet in terms of the number of strikes that websites get, and their popularity and so on, and YouTube channels, which is the whole point of this video. That if you take YouTube as a whole, it's what can be described as a complex system. The huge, vast amount of YouTube channels are very small indeed. Sometimes, anything between 1 and 100 subscribers. In terms of frequency, in terms of population, they are the majority of YouTube. As you go up in number, the category, say from 100 to 1,000, which my channel would fall into, there are fewer of us. When you go from 1,000 to 10,000, say, there are fewer again. And as you go up the size of your YouTube channel, the number of people who share that size with you, the number of channels of equivalent size, diminishes till you get to the point where there are far fewer channels with tens of millions of subscribers, and they are the very prominent channels that you'll often see as their videos trending and so on when you go to the home page of YouTube. They are the ones that get the publicity, get the attention, and from this point of view, get the advertising revenues. They can easily make a living off of their YouTube channels. They are professional in every sense of the word. Now, I would suggest to you that if you want to make a living from YouTube, you will not get to the level of, say, the millions unless you go about it a completely different way from what you are probably doing at the moment. So someone like Gary has no intention of ever making a living from it. He simply thinks, well, 20 quid a year, it's not to be sniffed at, and buy me a few pints or something like that, so why not? I'm not going to turn it down. The huge danger of that is that in monetizing your channel, you are actually altering the nature of the YouTube system as a whole. So let me try to explain that. It's a sort of an area that's described as emergence. So let me compare Facebook, which I know again in the past week or two I've noticed quite a lot of the channels that I subscribe to, the Gibsons for instance, and Sergeant Historian, remarking on the fact that they don't view or use Facebook a great deal. They prefer to stay on YouTube and inhabit this YouTube environment and interconnect with people with similar interests here rather than on Facebook. And I absolutely and entirely agree with that. Facebook and YouTube are completely different entities, and yet why is that? Because they are both performing a similar kind of role. They are both helping. If you take our small kind of wargaming community, not particularly large community in terms of world terms. So the wargaming population on Facebook is almost the same as the wargaming population on YouTube, and yet YouTube is a much friendlier, sociable environment. You feel as though you get to know people on it, you feel as though you are friends with them. On Facebook, you go on it at your peril. You're immediately trolled. Why does that happen? It's because the two different natures have emerged from the basic building blocks of the two different spheres. So, your channel is a single building block in the vast organisation that YouTube is, the vast complex system that YouTube is. You have certain rules for your channel. You may not realise it yourself, but your behaviour is determined in a particular way. So, for instance, if you take my channel, I don't monetize it, so that's a kind of characteristic of my channel. I tend to have extremely long videos on it in comparison to a lot of other channels. Therefore, I attract certain viewers and I don't attract others. Some people won't look at my videos simply because they are viewing them on a particular platform or in a particular environment. They haven't haven't got an hour to spend to listen to my rubbish, but they will go to another video that's only 2 minutes long and watch that. I tend to ignore those videos for a number of reasons, but the principal one is my viewing habits tend to be while I'm sat down at a desk painting model figures, for instance. I can't keep getting up and down, going to my laptop, clicking with my mouse, finding videos. I want to put something on that's at least 15-20 minutes usually, in order to allow me time to concentrate on my painting and listen to the video in the background. Similarly, in that respect, I don't tend to watch videos that require my eyes on the screen too much. For those, I would have to sit down in front of the screen to watch something such, I'm trying to think of an example, but such as instructions on how to build something, how to put pieces together. You can't just listen to that, you actually need to watch. So that would change the way in which I viewed that particular video. Other kind of hidden rules that you may not even kind of regard as rules, but things like if I see I use ad blocks, so I don't tend to notice adverts anyway, but if I see an advert that's been placed inside a video, I will often switch off the video at that point, simply because I don't want to be in that kind of commercial environment. If I'm listening to a chat, and I'm quite happy to listen to a chat, but if the subject strays off of the strict kind of areas of the hobby and wargaming and so on, and goes on to something like a discussion of breakfast cereals or whatever, I will probably switch off at that point. So I have my own rules for my own channel, and I have my own rules for channels that I watch. All that determines the success and failure of my channel and of others in a tiny, tiny way. But that's something that I like about complexity theory. It's that even though we all are minuscule atoms in the kind of the whole of nature, it gives you a kind of slight consolation that even though your own attitudes to life and your own significance on this planet and your own contribution to the world might not appear to be relevant or noticeable. In fact, in your own small way, you are affecting the whole of the environment in which you live, and that sort of example of YouTube is an example of that, where you can control, not control, but you can influence the environment around you. So in the case of monetization, for instance, of YouTube channels, simply by saying, well, 20 quid is not to be sniffed at, and monetizing your channel will alter the environment of YouTube as a whole. It will encourage people to imagine that they will possibly one day be able to make a living out of their channels, because they can start off small. They can start off by earning £20, but they imagine that as they build their audience up, it will get to the point where they'll get a couple of £100 a year. That would be good. They could get themselves a new camera or something like that. To make a living out of YouTube, I mean, let's be realistic. You have to making a living means it has to be able to feed you, clothe you, shelter you, house you. Even a channel as big, for instance, as Lindy Page, he put up a video not too long ago about the kind of YouTube apocalypse, as it was known, that was going on at the time, with channels being struck off for no apparent reason, and videos being demonetized because they were informed they were contravening conventions and rules, or breaking copyright issues, or not being suitable. The advertisers had found something in them that they objected to, so those particular videos were demonetized. And Lindy Page explained that even with his large subscriber base, he had only really recently got to the point where his checks were allowing him to pay the rent, for instance, for a month. Certainly wasn't keeping him fed, and he wasn't living the lifestyle of a kind of media tycoon or anything like that. So realistically, none of us mere mortals are ever going to get to the stage where we can make a living from YouTube. So it's preposterous to even dream that you might be able to. But what it is doing, what you are doing by monetizing your channel, is causing the quality of your YouTube experience and of others to diminish. It means that people are putting out videos simply to get the views, not to impart anything particular special. The titles become clickbait. They'll just put some rubbish out there talking about breakfast cereals or whatever, just to get those few mil views, just to add a couple of pence more to their income. And another thing that I notice does happen is that if a subscriber subscribes to them, they will subscribe back, regardless of what that other channel's content is, regardless of whether it has any content at all. Simply in order to boost the subscriber numbers. And in fact, what's been happening, I've noticed just in the last day or two, is that this mad scramble to get up to 1,000 subscribers is encouraging people to fish around the net, finding other people's channels just to get a sub to sub reciprocity going, so that they can build their channel levels really quickly, and that channel subscriber levels really quickly. And that's a sort of classic example. It's all froth. It's all a big bubble that will burst. And YouTube are running programs now. They're running algorithms that detect where you're not viewing another person's channel at all. They might not have any content on it that you're interested in. They will unsubscribe you automatically. This is why people who say, "Oh, I didn't mean to unsubscribe from your channel, YouTube did it for me," it's why, because they didn't mean to unsubscribe, but they're not watching your channel, and that's why YouTube's done it. So by doing all this, you are actually risking wrecking your channel, losing your channel. If you're not going to make money from it, and that's your prime motivation, you're going to stop putting out content. If your subscriber base is based on this completely unrelated, trying to think of the right word, but if you have hyped up your subscriber levels, it's just a big bubble, and it will burst, and your channel will diminish despite your intentions. If you look at my own viewing habits, I'm not going to watch videos that are a couple of minutes long, which people are feeling obliged to put out. They're having to hype up their channels with lots more content. If there isn't any content in the videos you're putting out, it's just all froth, and that to me is a perfect example of Facebook. That Facebook is absolutely all froth. Tiny little paragraphs. It only takes a split second to troll it, to go on to the next page and be unpleasant about them. It's quite easy to post really flippant, uninteresting comments. It can be done in a sort of split second, and someone else can see it and either like it or unlike it or whatever. The whole thing just explodes into a big, nasty, unmeaningful kind of entity. Whereas YouTube does have, I have found YouTube has been a really kind of rewarding experience for me, because I have been able to find quality in there. The one thing that both of them have, which say a library doesn't, is that everything is very contemporary. There's no kind of proper archiving of the material on Facebook or YouTube. So Facebook especially gets viewed immediately, and then it drops down and down and down, so that if something like, say, a club, I'm not going to mention which club I have in mind or anything like that, but if a club has a Facebook page and they want to kind of keep a running commentary going on a campaign or a tournament that they're running that goes on over a year, only the current kind of standings and the current game reports are going to be available. And in order to go back a year, find out how that first game played out and so on, you can't do it. You've got to go through so many posts that you just give up. YouTube is similar to that. It's a little bit more structured, in that if a club had a YouTube channel, it could have a playlist, and so you could go to that playlist for a particular tournament, for instance, and there might only be 20 or 30 videos on it, so it's not too difficult to go back a year and see what happened a year earlier. But YouTube still does, to an extent, work very much in the moment, and views happen at the time they get liked or disliked. People notice them. YouTube notices the viewing levels and recommends it to other people and so on. And you'll notice that with your channel as the time goes on, that videos you put up 4 or 5 years ago don't tend to increase their views unless they're on a subject which is of particular importance to people, and they've been tagged in a way that YouTube is able to recommend them to other people. But that's what I wanted to say as well about monetization, that now YouTube certainly does encourage people to view channels which have advertising on them over the demonetized ones. So I think, without being without blowing my own trumpet, I do think some of my videos, I often wonder why they don't get more views than they do. I'm not saying they're great videos or anything like that, but when I look at, when I compare them to some other videos that seem to have nothing in them whatsoever, I think, how did that get twice as many views as mine? I mean, what did people watch it for? I think part of that is the very fact that you have an advert somewhere in that video, and YouTube have directed the viewer's attention to it simply so they can see the advert rather than listen to the rubbish that surrounds the advert. So what this means is that what YouTube have done is really to provide a more suitable place for their advertisers to advertise their products. At the moment, advertisers can put their adverts on that massive population of channels that have less than 100 subscribers. Their videos get hardly any views, but there's an advert there, so even if it only gets 5 views, that advert gets 5 views. That's not something that is appealing to advertisers. I mean, I don't claim to be an advertising or media expert, but I did used to have a job in advertising. How I survived 7 years in it, I don't know, because I was rubbish at it. So I'm not an expert by any means, but I can tell you that the advertisers are interested in their coverage of the population as a whole, yes. So by monetising channels below 1,000 subscribers, YouTube are allowing the advertisers to get a wide coverage, but they are also significantly interested in placing their adverts in media and in areas where they get a relevance to their, they get the relevant audience that they need, and they get quality. They're reaching the appropriate age groups or interest groups or whatever, gender, whatever you like. They're not doing that by putting their adverts into a 2-minute bit of nonsense about someone's kitten or something like that. It's just not gonna happen. So there's not just this massive, huge, high-profile area of I forget the channel's name, but the guy that posted the video of the suicide victim in Japan, and advertisers clearly not wanting to be associated with that, even though he did reach a massive audience. There's also the other end of the scale where it's not worth them paying YouTube to spread this advertising campaign out to areas where, filter it right down to areas where there is no impact for their advert. That is, I'm sure that's one of the reasons why YouTube have now raised the bar in terms of your subscriber level requirement. Yeah, there's something else I wanted to say, but it's gone from my head. Yeah, that was it. What this is going to do, which I think, again, is another good thing, is that it will, for people who are seriously determined to make a living one day out of their YouTube channels, they will have to raise their stakes to do it. So from a viewer's point of view, it's a great thing, because they will have to improve the quality of their videos in every regard. They will have to, in terms of scripting, of editing, of visual material, visual impact, interest, relevance, all those kind of things. They are not going to be able to do it just by coming on camera and waffling for however long on something just because they need to get content up on their channel. In other words, they are going to have to, if they want to make a living and be professional, they are going to have to turn. They're going to have to turn professional straight away, immediately, and produce videos of a professional standard. So that is going to be a good thing from the point of view of people like myself viewing. It's also, it means they're going to have to work a lot harder, but it's also going to weed out the people who are just doing it for that odd 20 quid, who don't really have anything to say. So people who want to put up something on a subject they're interested in, like wargaming, that's going to be fine, that's going to carry on. They're not going to notice really 20 quid a year or whatever disappearing from their pockets. So they're going to carry on, and they're going to, from my point of view, I'm going to enjoy still carrying on watching them. But all the rubbish that comes on is just not going to be there any longer, because people are not going to have any prospect of making any money out of that kind of thing. So it's going to weed out all that stuff and make the YouTube environment again a lot better. It's going to change the rules, as it were, and that is going to change the nature of YouTube, getting back to complexity theory. The one thing that I did think might happen, which again in a way is no bad thing, is sometimes someone won't have any videos on their YouTube channel. They may not even have a YouTube channel at all. But everybody, or most people now, have got things like smartphones and video camcorders, that kind of thing. When something of public interest happens, something really sensational, like a plane crash or a train crash or a terrorist attack or car accident, something like that happens, people get their phones out now and they film it. It's absolutely unbelievable that they do, and they do that knowing that they might be able to make a little bit of money out of that. If they can get it up on YouTube, it will be viewed by millions of people, or they can sell it to whoever, the BBC or a TV organisation or the press, and make money from it. Now, if they won't be able to do that on YouTube with the new rules, because they are never going to have 1,000 subscriber subscriber base, because they haven't got a YouTube channel up till then, or if they did, they didn't have any content on it. So they're not going to be able to monetize that particular video and make money out of it in the way, unfortunately, I think you could say. It is important to be able to see these events and to witness some of the things that are going on around it. But really, what you get on YouTube with that is a kind of voyeurism. It's not healthy. It's simply allowing people to see the gory detail in a way, and it's intrusive on the dignity of the victims and their privacy and so on. So maybe that's a good thing as well, that it will stamp out a lot of that, and it will only be the big media owners, the TV companies and the press owners and so on, who will be able to purchase that material if they think it's suitable for viewers and put it up. So there will be a much more professional control over that. As indeed, I mean, I don't know the ins and outs of it, but things like these terrorist-related websites and so on, they are never going to be able to build up to 1,000 subscribers in order to be able to publish their material. Not that monetization is a big issue with them, but it will be another kind of weapon in YouTube's arsenal to be able to control inappropriate material on their media. Right. Okay. So there you go. Another long waffle on the subject, but I find this absolutely fascinating, as I say, mainly because I've got this. I'm able to kind of, this book really changed my life in a way. I think that every story on the news, every bit of human behaviour that I observe, in, you know, when it used to be at work, or now when I go, even when you go shopping and you see how queues form, all those kind of things, it can all be looked at through the lens of this subject, complexity theory, and this, as I say, this latest controversy about the changes in the YouTube partner program fits right into this category. So thanks very much. That's just my thoughts on that subject. Thanks very much for listening. See you on the next video. Bye for now.